Women are the ones that end relationships. That's the general rule. You probably heard the statistic that 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women. But look at this graph. This is just relationships. Like this first question here, how often have you been the one who ended it? 62% of the time, men say yes, I was the one who ended it. 33% no. Compare that to women. 76% of the time, yes, they were the ones to end it, and only 17% of the time were they on the receiving end. Or this next question actually shows the gender disparity with even more clarity. Have you had a partner end it with you? 84% of men say yes, that's an experience I've had. Only 12%, a very small minority of men who've never had that experience. Compare that to women. 67% of women have had the experience of a man ending it with them, and 30% of women have never had that. 1 in 3 women have never been dumped, never had a man break up with them. Only 12% of men can say the same. It turns out this is what men are afraid of committing to a relationship, putting all of their good energy, their time, their resources, their love into that relationship, and then having the woman just dump them. I want to address this because this is one of the biggest fears of my audience. I discovered this in the comment section of a video I did recently where I was talking about men's fear of commitment and monogamy because it means they're going to have to give up sexual variety, the ability to sleep with lots of women. But it turns out that's not actually what men are worried about. Check out this comment here. I have the opposite problem, probably because I'm older. The thought of committing to a woman and her backstabbing me is the problem. I have no problem having sex with the same woman for the rest of my life. I just can't stand the thought of her someday turning on me or leaving me over some stupid ass reason. That was the second most popular comment on that video. And this was the most popular comment, which actually sums it up more succinctly. I've never been scared of being with one woman, more so being stuck with the wrong woman. If this describes you, let me first say that you being scared of being stuck with the wrong woman, of making the wrong choice of partner, is a good fear to have. You should be scared. Your choice of partner is probably the most important choice you're ever going to make. Don't screw it up. But if you're so paranoid about a woman breaking up with you, tricking you, cheating on you in the future, that it's actually inhibiting your ability to attract a girlfriend, it's removing your motivation to even get onto the dating market, then that's a problem. That's assuming you still want a relationship. And it's those people that I'm making this video for. So if that describes you, you want a girlfriend, but you're too worried about how things are going to turn out in the future to really get started, you're crippled by that fear, then please pay attention. I want to help you. I want to do my absolute best to try and remove that fear so that it doesn't cripple you, so that you're able to date and have relationships. And so in service of that, I've come up with a 10-step plan that you can follow to try and remove these fears. You've got to be open. You've got to be mindful of the content that you're consuming. You've got to work on your social circle and also gain some dating experience. You need to take responsibility and become a lot more comfortable with conflict. You need to practice forgiveness. You need to inform yourself about how prenuptial agreements work. And lastly, you just need to apply some logic and then develop some trust. So let's go through these in a lot more detail. Let's start with number 1, being open. None of these steps are going to be remotely effective if, at your core, you are closed off to the possibility of having a healthy relationship. I'm not saying that you need to believe that it's going to happen as some kind of fated inevitability, but if you're not fundamentally open to the possibility, I guarantee it's impossible. Us human beings, we don't really live in reality. We live in our perception of reality, and only things that we really believe are possible for us are actually ever going to occur. And so if your heart feels closed and weighed down and your mind just feels so riddled with paranoia, I understand, you have my compassion, but you're going to need to move a little bit. Just open that window of possibility slightly and believe that it's possible that you can be happy in a relationship. That is the first step, and it's non-negotiable. Number 2, you've got to be consuming the right content. The very fact that you're watching my channel and the fact that you've clicked on this video and that you're still watching tells me that you are interested in informing yourself about gender dynamics and how to have a healthy relationship. That's a great start. Your father and your grandfather didn't have access to the kind of resources that we have today. This career that I'm doing, giving information on relationships, it didn't even exist a few decades ago. Take advantage of the technological age that we live in. All of this information is available to you. You're worried about toxic female behavior. You're worried about relationships becoming codependent and abusive. Great. There are fantastic resources, my channel included, online telling you how to spot negative female behavior, how to conduct yourself in a healthy masculine way in a relationship to prevent these problems from occurring. Arm yourself with knowledge. You're going to feel so much safer. But at the same time, be very mindful of consuming too much content that could be negative in nature. We know how these social media algorithms work. They're trying to push you into these emotionally volatile echo chambers where the very worst parts of humanity are constantly thrust in your face, getting you all triggered and worked up. The relationship, dating, understanding space is no different from all the other political spaces or social causes. There's a huge amount of content out there that's not designed to inform, but designed to inflame your emotions. And if you're finding yourself incredibly paranoid about female nature and you're never going to be happy or be able to attract a girlfriend, you might want to reconsider how much content you're consuming in case it's doing damage to your mindset. Okay, next step. Let's talk about where you're meeting women, because if you're approaching random women in nightclubs, or if you're going online onto Tinder or Bumble or whatever, there is no quality control, and so you're so much more likely to be meeting toxic, low-quality women. On my channel, I have repeatedly stressed the importance of developing your social circle, surrounding yourself with high-quality individuals, men and women, and then drawing from your dating experiences from those pool of people. Not only does this have the benefit of having the women that you encounter pre-vetted by other people whose opinions you trust, it also means that how a woman's going to conduct herself in a relationship is going to be significantly better when she's aware of your wider community and the two of you have mutual friends. Women are extremely concerned about their reputation. If she meets some guy at the club or on a dating app, you're essentially anonymous to her, and it's that much more easy for her to abuse you or ghost you or whatever it might be. But if the two of you know the same group of people, you're part of a community of friends, then she's going to treat you so much nicer. For men who don't have a girlfriend, this step is absolutely essential. Make friends with people who are in relationships that you would like to emulate. That's how you meet a high quality girl, somebody who's going to be on your vibe. Because if your male friends have wonderful, healthy relationships with their girlfriends, and through that social circle, you're introduced to new women, I guarantee you're so much more likely to have a healthy relationship with that woman, because she's going to share the same values of the women who are already in that social circle. Where you meet women is of the utmost importance. Do not underestimate how essential it is to do this step correctly. Okay, number 4 is the importance of getting some experience, some dating relationship experience. A lot of men who have this paranoia that their future girlfriend is guaranteed to cheat on them or just dump them for some silly reason, they haven't dated a lot of women, or they've dated a few women and those relationships have gone badly. If you wanted to build a boat, I wouldn't expect you to have all of the skills and experience necessary from the beginning. I understand that it's going to take practice for you to develop. The same goes with relationship skills, how to handle conflict, how to spot quality women. I understand that if you're cynical or if you're scared, that's going to be very difficult for you to fulfill. Like, I'm worried about relationships. I'm worried about them turning my life upside down. How am I meant to gain the motivation to go out there and date? Well, this is actually a great opportunity for you to demonstrate some masculine courage. Yes, you're going to risk rejection, failure, vulnerability, but you've got to do it anyway. I guarantee that if you spend the next 5 years terrified of talking to women because you're worried about how the eventual relationship is going to end up, if you do eventually meet one woman and then commit your life to her, it's so much more likely that you've made a mistake or that you're not going to handle yourself properly in that relationship than if you spent those 5 years dating a dozen women. Theory is good, but experience counts for more. Okay, number 5, take responsibility. I've noticed that in manosphere circles, there's a lot of criticism of women who enter into abusive relationships with men and then afterwards play the victim, particularly if this is a pattern. They've done it multiple times. Like, yes, we all have sympathy and compassion for any individual who's been in an abusive relationship. That goes without saying. But at some point, we do also need to have the conversation, why do you continue to choose this kind of a man? Can't you take some responsibility for not learning from your previous mistakes, for reenacting this pattern over and over again? Well, guess what? The exact same true holds in reverse. You absolutely have my sincere compassion if you've been in an awful relationship with a woman, if you've been a victim of abuse and it's made you terrified about relationships in the future. I think most guys are going to make that mistake once or twice. That's understandable, no judgment. But making that mistake is not nearly as important with what you choose to do with that information afterwards. If you committed 3 years of your life to the wrong woman and now it's shaken you to your core and you have all of these trust issues, well, what are you going to do with that state? Are you going to retreat from the dating market, run away from the world, and just nestle into a sort of psychological safety net of victimhood? Or are you going to take responsibility and say, what was it inside me that couldn't see those red flags, that tolerated all of that negative behavior? How can I change and do better next time? Not excusing her actions, but the important thing is I'm also not excusing you. Like I said, the fact that you're interested in this information, you're watching this video right now, that's really good indication that you are taking responsibility. You want to understand this stuff. You want to make better choices moving forward. That's great. Number 5 is conflict. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty here. I know this goes against the stereotype of men as these aggressive animal creatures who are always up for fighting. But in truth, what I've seen from men in their relationships over and over again is that they are too conflict averse. Maybe they don't want to be accused of being like the angry, ranting man. Maybe they are confused by why their girlfriend is upset with them. They don't have the words. They don't have the emotional self-awareness to actually engage in those conversations. But when fights, arguments seem to occur, they tune out, they ignore it. You can't do that. Those conflicts, those little arguments that pop up in a relationship aren't just things that you can ignore and hope to go away. They are indicating some kind of friction, some kind of unhappiness from your partner. You need to address that. Again, every man who's been in an abusive relationship with a woman absolutely has my sympathy. But that sympathy is tempered by a little bit of criticism from me if there were clear signs that she was abusive or that there were problems early on in the relationship, but you committed to her anyway. Jordan Peterson says that there is no fight that's so small that it's not worth having. And I 100% agree with him. That, it's not a big deal or we'll figure it out later attitude is simply not good enough. There is too much at stake. You need to value your life more and say, I'm not going to take a risk and commit to this woman until I absolutely know that we're on the same page, that we have the same values, that we're well suited to each other. The way you're going to find that out is through conflict. More specifically, through the conflict resolution. You're an individual, she's an individual, and it makes sense that as the two of you attempt to join your lives together, there's going to be some jostling, some bumping up against each other. You're not going to have completely smooth edges to begin with. That's okay, that's normal, but what's important is that you commit to the process. With every conflict that arises, you need to zoom in on it and actually discover, is this something small? Are we able to move through this? Or is this a deal breaker? Does this indicate some massive chasm in our values that we're not going to be able to reconcile? And if that's the case, then discover it early. Break up with her, find a new girl who you're better suited to. Or if it's not such a serious issue, then talk about it. Learn those conflict resolution skills. Develop your capacity for emotional expression, communication, so that you can communicate your inner world and then listen when she's communicating hers. I want to move on now. I don't want to spend too much on this point, but the main thrust of my argument is that you have to become a lot more comfortable with conflict. The next step is forgiveness. A lot of guys are beating themselves up over the mistakes that they've made in the past, and perhaps the tone of voice that I'm using in this video is not helping. It's like, Alexander, you're just making me feel shit about all the stupid stuff I've done in the past. I apologize if I'm coming across that way, but in truth, if you're still beating yourself up for things that went wrong with your previous girlfriends, you're not going to be able to start over with a clean slate with any new woman. Withholding forgiveness from yourself is just keeping you locked in your current set of circumstances. There's no room for growth or change or development. You're a human. You've made mistakes. You messed up. You had some bad judgment. I've made mistakes. I've had bad judgment. It doesn't really matter what happens in the past, not in isolation anyway. What matters is how you take those things from the past and how you use it to inform your future. So while you're analyzing your past and all of the mistakes that you've made, please be kind and compassionate to yourself. Forgive yourself. But of course, be smart moving forward, which brings us to step number 8, which is if you're scared about the implications of committing to a woman, get a prenuptial agreement. I am 100% in favor of these. I don't think any man should be entering into a marriage without getting a prenuptial agreement. I think all of the arguments against them are nonsense. That's not romantic to get it in like a legal framework, or we'd plan to be together forever. Of course you do, but you've got to plan for the worst. And it's not like getting a regular marriage without a prenuptial agreement is devoid of a legal framework. You're just letting the state dictate the terms. But you are unique. Your life is unique. Your values are unique. Get it down in black and white. Obviously, you hope the relationship is going to last, but my point is that you should know at the bottom line that if it doesn't, how things are going to get split. And so much of the pain that comes from divorces and breakups is because there are these long legal battles as all of the vagaries and grayness of the relationship are fought over by lawyers who end up stealing 1/3 of the couple's resources anyway. Cut that out. Put it into the agreement, make it black and white, make it clear so that if the relationship ends, which of course sucks, at least you don't have to go through a legal battle. At least you know exactly what the consequences are, you both know of the relationship ending. I'm not one of those people that believes that like the resources of a couple belong to the man necessarily because he was the one earning the money. If she was raising the children and contributing to the relationship, that woman does deserve some financial protection. Her contribution needs to be valued, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with just being sensible about protecting your assets. If you go into a relationship with a house or two, a significant investments, and she brings nothing except perhaps a few $100,000 worth of student debt, then your prenuptial agreement should reflect those circumstances. Having a realistic agreement about what to do when the relationship breaks up is also a powerful disincentivizer for the woman for just casually ending the relationship, thinking in her magical fairyland that she's just going to have to take half of your stuff and that's it. If you're going to get married, you are signing a contract, so at least make sure that the terms are ones that you actually agree to. I'm really hoping that that step is going to be enough to reduce a lot of men's paranoia, but if not, we'll move on to the next one, which is logic. I know that emotionally speaking, it can feel as though you're in a very vulnerable position committing to a woman. What's to stop her from making false accusations, from running away with my resources? What's to stop her from cheating on me? Those can occur, but largely what you're experiencing at this stage is an emotional truth, not a one in reality, because you're not even talking about a specific woman yet. This is just your projection of fears into the future, probably based off things that have happened in the past. But let's actually look at the data. Take something like infidelity. The average number of women who cheat on their partners is 1 in 5. I mean, that sucks. That's not good. 20% of women cheating on their husbands, that's far too high. I'm not happy with that statistic, but do you see, logically speaking, do you plan to be in the bottom 20% of functionality in terms of relationships? I really hope that you're aspiring for something better. 4/5 of women do not cheat on their partners. I know some guys are worried about their partner monkey branching them, like, oh, as I get older, or if I lose my looks, if I lose some of my money, she's just going to run off with some other guy. But actually think that through logically. If she has committed to you, the two of you have been through a pair bonding process together, you have history together, then that's not something that's easily replaced, particularly if you have children. I mean, maybe she might be able to take half of the relationship's resources, but then she's only going to be enjoying a lifestyle that's half as good. That's not a trade up. Women are not eager to divorce their husbands. They're not eager to break up with them. When women get married, they want the relationship to work. There are exceptions, of course, like women who have personality disorders who are looking to reinforce their victimhood story, and so they love the idea of breaking up and having a whole bunch of drama, but I'm assuming that you're smart enough to avoid those kinds of women. I'm just asking you to put your emotions down for a moment and actually consider it logically. If you meet a nice, sweet girl and the two of you have that pair bonding experience, you're in a relationship, you have children, you merge finances, you're living a life together, there's a massive disincentive for her jumping ship to something else. A lot of relationships do stay together, and my question to you is, why can't that be you? My final step is trust, and by that I mean not trusting the woman, not at all. I mean trusting yourself. How do you feel about yourself? Do you have high self-esteem? Are you emotionally self-aware? Are you intelligent? Are you a good judge of character of people? Are you easily fooled, or are you able to spot other people's machinations and manipulations? What I have consistently found from men who express this concern that a woman is just going to take advantage of them or dump them or cheat on them is that they don't fundamentally trust themselves and their own capacity to handle a relationship and all the difficulties that come along with it, or to even choose the right partner in the first place. That's what's got to change. Think of your romantic relationship the same as any endeavor, whether or not you're starting a new business or you're joining a sports team. There's going to be difficulties, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be problems. Of course, there's going to be questions about the degree of functionality of any of these organizations or sports teams that you join, but the main question is always, do you trust yourself? Do you have faith in your ability to navigate difficult areas and situations? If you don't, then that's got to be what you're working on. I would even say that this might need to be your first priority. If you don't fundamentally trust yourself, then now's not the right time to really even be thinking about relationships. Go into therapy, talk to some trusted friends or family members, figure out what's going on with you. Build yourself up, grow, develop, change, create a high self-esteem where you really trust yourself. At that point, when you're at your peak masculine, confident, healthy self, is when you're going to be able to absolutely crush it in relationships. So those are the 10 steps that I would recommend for any man who's scared to begin relationships because he's so overwhelmed by fear of the possibility that those relationships might end or become toxic at some point in the future. If you follow those 10 steps, I think you're going to have a much better likelihood likelihood of creating the healthy relationship that you want. Quite sadly, I've tended to find that videos like these that encourage like a lot of personal responsibility on the behalf of the man don't actually tend to perform so well on YouTube, because I think we are just a little bit more inclined to like blame others and push our problems outward. But if this kind of content really appeals to you, like you loved what you heard, then head on over to my Patreon. You're going to find so much more self-help style content over there. And I really go into a lot of depth. The YouTube content always tends to be like a little bit flashy, a little bit shorter, but that's the nature of this platform. On Patreon, I really take the time to explain these things in the appropriate amount of depth. The most recent video that we've released on Patreon is about dating as a man who is autistic. Being on the autism spectrum does have certain advantages, but it also comes with certain disadvantages. So on my Patreon, there's a whole video exploring that phenomenon and going through the things that you need to be aware of as a potentially autistic man in the dating market. I also want to end by saying that if you've gone through this 10-step list and you feel like it's too general, I mean, of course it's general, I'm just speaking to thousands of people here, but if you feel like it doesn't appropriately address your concerns, your unique circumstances, but you are truly motivated to fix whatever's holding you back, then please reach out to me on Hey Hero. That's where I do my private consultations. I create personalized video for people. Send me your story, send me your information, and I'll get back to you with advice on how to improve your situation.